Just enough to smell. Just enough to end it.
What would you do if the person you trusted with your grief was the same person kneeling over your food at 2 in the morning, pouring...
If you've ever loved someone who kept score while pretending they weren't, like this video before we go further. Subscribe to African Story Vault.
Now let me take you back to the beginning, before the kitchen, before the betrayal, back to a 6-year-old girl standing on a wooden stool, learning that food could be love.
Her name was Amara Chinello, 29 years old, last of 3 children, born in Enugu to a retired schoolteacher father and a mother who sold fabric in Ogaje Market with hands that never stopped moving. Amara did not learn to cook. She was raised into it. By 6, she was standing on a stool beside her mother, gripping a wooden spoon too heavy for her small wrist, stirring egusi soup while her mother hummed old church hymns under her breath. Her mother used to say, "Amara, food is the only language that never lies. A pot will always tell you the truth about the hand that made it." That sentence followed her everywhere. At 24, she packed a single duffel bag, took the 230,000 naira her mother pressed into her palm at the park before the bus pulled off, and moved to Lagos with nothing but talent and hunger, the good kind of hunger, the kind that builds things. She was not the loudest woman in any room. She didn't need to be. She let her food speak first, and her food never once stuttered. 2 years as a kitchen assistant. A year and a half as a junior sous chef. And then, slowly, quietly, from a cramped 1-bedroom flat on Allen Avenue, she began building something of her own, small private catering jobs, birthdays, naming ceremonies, owambe after owambe. People who ate her jollof once found a way to order it again. She was becoming somebody. Not famous. Just known. And in a city like Lagos, being known for something honest is its own kind of miracle. But this story isn't really about Amara's talent. It's about who she chose to keep beside her while that talent grew. Her name was Zainab. Everyone called her Z. They met at 14, in a secondary school geography class, seated together because the teacher assigned desks alphabetically, and fate has a strange sense of humor. Their teacher spoke in a monotone so flat it was almost dangerous, the kind of voice that could put a whole room to sleep mid-sentence. Amara and Z survived those classes by passing notes back and forth, stifling laughter behind textbooks. That was the beginning. 2 girls who kept each other from falling asleep in a boring classroom, and somehow that turned into 15 years of everything else. But if you looked closely, and Amara, for a long time, refused to, you would have noticed they loved differently. Amara remembered birthdays without being reminded and showed up with a cake, even when money was tight. Z remembered when it was convenient, and when she forgot, she somehow made you comfort her about forgetting. Amara shared her food before anyone asked. Z counted portions like she was guarding treasure, and only gave generously when generosity could be traded for something later. Amara stayed, through breakups, through job losses, through the ordinary disasters of adult life. Z had a talent for disappearing exactly when things got hard, and reappearing exactly when things got good. Here is the part I need you to understand, because it is the whole engine of this story. Amara had known Z since she was 14 years old, and a friendship that old builds its own gravity. You stop asking whether it's good for you. You just assume it's yours, the way you assume the air around you belongs to you. Amara made excuses for the selfishness, for the way every conversation eventually curved back toward Z's problems, Z's needs, Z's feelings. She told herself it was just how Z was built. She told herself 15 years of loyalty had to count for something. She was wrong. And the proof arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wrapped in the worst phone call of her life. Amara's mother died on a Thursday. A hit and run on the road into Enugu. A road her mother had walked and traveled 1,000 times. A road that should have known her by now, should have been gentle with her. A truck did not stop. 40 seconds, and a woman who had spent her whole life being careful was taken by someone else's carelessness. Amara's brother, Chidi, called her at 3 in the afternoon. She remembers sitting down on her kitchen floor before her mind had even finished processing the sentence. Her legs simply gave out beneath her, the way a body sometimes understands grief before the heart is ready to. She sat there for almost 20 minutes before she could stand again. She called Z. No answer. She called again. No answer. On the 4th try, Z finally picked up. "I'm in a meeting. Is everything okay?" "Z, my mother. She's gone." "Oh my God, Amara, I'm so sorry. Let me call you back, okay? I'm in the middle of something." She called back 4 hours later. By then, Amara was already on a bus headed home, her forehead pressed against the cold window, watching Lagos disappear behind her through tears she couldn't stop. Z did not come to the burial. On the morning of the funeral, while Amara stood in the church in her mother's old wrapper, her eyes swollen from 3 days of crying, Her phone buzzed with a message. Something came up. "I'll make it up to you. You know I'm here, even when I'm not there," followed by a thumbs-up emoji. At her mother's burial. Amara read that message, standing outside the church doors, and something shifted in her. Not rage, something quieter and far more dangerous than rage. Recognition. Like fog lifting slowly off a shape she had always known was standing there, but had never let herself see clearly. But grief does not leave room for reckoning. Grief only leaves room for surviving 1 hour at a time. So she folded the hurt away somewhere deep, and she buried her mother, and she went home to Lagos to grieve in silence. For 3 months, she barely spoke to anyone. She cooked because cooking was the only place that still felt like her mother's hands were on hers, guiding the spoon. Grief and love, it turns out, can live in the very same kitchen. Then, in the 3rd month, Z called. Bright, warm. The voice she used whenever she needed something to be easy again. "Amara, I have been so terrible. I know. I'm so sorry about your mom. I can't imagine. Things just got complicated, and I kept meaning to call, and I know there's no excuse. Can we start over? Can I come see you?" Amara sat with the phone in her hand for a long moment. She was still crying most evenings. She was lonely in that particular way. Grief makes you lonely, surrounded by people, and still somehow alone in the room. "Come," she said. Z arrived with a small bag of chin-chin from a shop on the way, sat in Amara's kitchen, and talked and laughed until the apartment felt a little less like a grave. And Amara, who needed a friend more than she needed to be right, let it go. That was her love. Wide. Forgiving. Costly in ways she wouldn't fully understand until much later. 2 weeks after Z's return, an email changed everything. The Lagos Culinary Showcase. A regional competition for independent chefs under 35. 3 rounds. A panel of 5 respected judges, and a grand prize that made Amara's hands go still when she read it, a fully sponsored 6-month culinary residency in Edinburgh, Scotland. She read it 3 times. Then she called Chidi and said, "This is what Mama used to pray for." She applied. She was accepted. And that evening, buzzing with something clean and hopeful for the first time in months, she told Z, "Amara, this is huge. I'm so happy for you. Wait, is it still open for applications?" She sent the link without a second's hesitation. "Apply. You're good in the kitchen, too. Let the best win. A win for one of us is a win for both of us. That is what it looks like when someone loves without a strategy." Z applied. Z was accepted, too. And that is when the jokes began. At first, they sounded like nothing, the ordinary banter of 2 old friends. "When I win this thing and I'm in Edinburgh, who's going to cook for you, Amara?" Amara laughed along, because that was the language they had always spoken. But the jokes did not stay small. They sharpened, slowly, the way a blade left too long against a stone. One evening, after Amara's egusi turned out especially rich, the kind of pot that pulls the whole building toward your front door, Z tasted it, set her spoon down, and said, "It's a good thing this isn't the competition. The judges would crown you and send the rest of us home." Then, almost as an afterthought, with a small laugh, "Imagine if your food smelled like kerosene on the day. Competition nerves. These things happen." She laughed long and bright. Amara did not laugh that time. She looked at her pot for a moment, then said quietly, "Let's hope not." There is an old saying my grandmother used to repeat, "Listen to what a person says when they are laughing, because the joke is the message. The laughter is only the costume it wears so you don't run." Amara would remember that saying later. Too late, and also, somehow, exactly in time. If someone in your life has been telling you exactly who they are from inside a smile, and you've been laughing instead of listening, type "I hear it now" in the comments. This community exists for people learning to listen past the laughter. The competition was held at the Lagos Television Center on a Saturday morning. The night before, competitors arranged their stations, labeled containers of salt, oil, spices, arranged with the quiet devotion of a prayer. Amara arranged hers with more care than usual. She touched each container lightly before leaving, the way her mother used to touch her old Bible before a journey. She went home. She slept 4 hours. She woke before dawn, made tea, and sat in the stillness talking to her mother, a habit she'd carried since March. Not exactly prayer, just conversation. "Today's the day, Mama. I'll make the egusi the way you taught me. I won't rush the pepper. I'll let the oil break properly before anything goes in. You always said the oil knows when you're in a hurry, and it punishes you for it." She smiled to herself in the quiet kitchen. "I won't be in a hurry." She folded her mother's old apron, faded blue, with a yellow hem worn soft from 20 years of use, into her bag. She had decided the night before that she would wear it. What Amara did not know was that 3 hours earlier, at exactly 2:17 in the morning, Z had let herself into the prep room. She had planned this for 2 weeks. Tested the mixture at home. Replaced the salt with baking soda and detergent, blended carefully enough that the color and texture would pass a glance. She mixed vegetable oil with kerosene, just enough to ruin the taste without announcing itself, just enough to end a dream without leaving a fingerprint. She was in and out in 11 minutes, what she had not accounted for, because people who plan betrayal only ever see what they want to see, was that Mama Ngozi, the night cleaner, had not gone home. Her knees had been troubling her for weeks, and the supervisor let her rest in the back storeroom instead of taking the long bus ride home in the dark. She woke near 2 in the morning to use the bathroom and heard a voice in the prep kitchen. She stood frozen in the corridor and listened to every word. When Z left, Mama Ngozi walked quietly into the kitchen, opened her phone, and confirmed with her own eyes exactly what had been done to that station. She touched nothing. She simply sat with her mop, her silence, and a slow, righteous anger, and she waited for morning. Amara arrived at 7:15 that morning, her mother's apron folded in her bag. Mama Ngozi was mopping the entrance corridor, and Amara, the way she stopped for anyone doing honest, unseen work, paused beside her. "Good morning, Ma. You're here early. How are your legs today?" Mama Ngozi looked up, and something in her face made Amara go still. Not pity. Something older than pity, the look of a person deciding whether to finally set down a heavy thing they'd been carrying all night. "Good morning, my daughter." She glanced both ways down the empty corridor and lowered her voice. "I have something to tell you, about your station, about last night." Amara listened. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. When the old woman finished, Amara walked to her station and tasted the salt with a wet fingertip, the flat, bitter bite of detergent under baking soda. She opened the oil bottle and pressed it to her nose. Kerosene. She stood there a moment, the hall filling around her with lights and laughter and the nervous energy of a competition about to begin. Z arrived at 7:40, spotted her across the hall, and waved, open, warm, radiant. She crossed the floor and pulled Amara into a hug. "Today's the day, let the best chef win." Her eyes were clear, unbothered, completely, chillingly at ease. "Let the best chef win," Amara said back. 10 minutes before the competition began, Mama Ngozi found her again. "My daughter, what she did to you, she deserves the same. Let me help you. We take her oil, her salt. We give her what she gave you. Let the whole country watch her taste it." Amara let herself imagine it, really imagine it, for 4 honest seconds. Z's face collapsing on camera, the confusion, the public unraveling. It felt, for those 4 seconds, exactly like justice. Then she thought of her mother, of a woman in a faded blue apron who had raised her in a kitchen that smelled of crayfish and palm oil and something harder to name, something like integrity, like the stubborn refusal to become the thing that was done to you. "I hear you, Ma," Amara said softly, "and thank you, truly, but no." She smoothed the apron over her front. "My mother didn't raise me to win like that. I won't become the kind of person someone else's cruelty pushed me into being." She touched the old woman's arm. "But thank you for telling me. That was the most important thing anyone could have done for me today." She went to the organizers, calmly explained that her provisions had been tampered with, and requested replacements without naming anyone, without a scene. Then she returned to her station, and she cooked. She cooked the way her mother taught her, without hurry, without doubt. She let the oil find its temperature before the pepper went in. She tasted at every stage, not from fear this time, but from attention. Because food, her mother always said, will talk to you if you're willing to listen. Her agusi settled on the tongue and made people go quiet. Her jollof had that smoky, burnt-bottom perfection you cannot fake and cannot rush. Her plantain came out the color of evening sunlight. 3 hours later, the dishes were submitted, and the judges began scoring. Then the large screen above the panel, normally reserved for sponsor logos, flickered on. Not the scoreboard. Security footage. Grainy, time-stamped 2:17 a.m., the whole hall watched. Z at Amara's station, moving through the labeled containers with practiced, unhurried hands. Her voice, captured on a secondary audio feed, take out the salt, put in the baking soda, mix with detergent, mix it well so it looks the same. She won't notice until it's too late. Her laughter, low and satisfied. The hall went completely silent. Amara was not surprised. She had known since 7:15 that morning. But watching it now, publicly, undeniably, the weight of it landed somewhere new. Not in her stomach this time. In her chest. In the place where 15 years of friendship had lived. She looked at Z. Z was already looking back, and the performance on her face had collapsed completely. What was left underneath was smaller, more human, something that, in another life, might have been called remorse. Z's voice broke across the hall as she crossed the floor, cameras following her. I'm sorry. I was scared. I was so scared you'd win, and you're better than me. You've always been better than me, and I couldn't accept it. I panicked. I'm so sorry. She was crying now, genuinely, it seemed, the kind of crying that comes when something you've held too tightly for too long finally breaks open. The head judge, Dr. Funky Adisa, spoke into the silence. What would you like us to do? Every camera in the room turned to a woman in a faded blue apron, deciding, publicly, something most people only ever have to decide in private. Test the dishes, Amara said quietly. Just test the dishes. They did. Slowly. Carefully. Z was disqualified. The competition rules on sabotage were unambiguous, and she had signed them herself. Amara won. Not because her competitor was removed, but because when the judges tasted her food, it was simply the best food in the room. One judge said on camera, "This woman cooked like she had something to prove to someone she'll never see again." He had no idea how right he was. Amara walked over to where Z stood, mascara tracked down her face, hands wrapped around a paper cup of water like it was the only thing left to hold on to. "Let me speak," Z whispered. "I have known you since we were 14 years old," Amara said, her voice quiet and steady in the way a voice becomes when someone has already made peace with what they need to say. "I stood beside you through your father's illness, through the job you lost, through the heartbreak that made you cry until your eyes swelled shut. When my mother died, you sent me a thumbs-up emoji." She let that sit for a moment. "You came back 2 weeks later with chin-chin and an apology, and I let you back in, because I was grieving, and you were familiar, and I confused familiar with safe. You were never safe. I just loved you too much to see it clearly." The hall was silent around them. "You replaced my salt with detergent. You put kerosene in my oil. And this morning you hugged me and smiled and told me to let the best chef win." She shook her head slowly. "I will forgive you. I want you to know that, not for you, for myself. Because my mother taught me that bitterness is a meal you cook for someone else and end up eating alone. When I'm ready, and I'm not ready today, I will let this go." She picked up her bag. "But our friendship, Z, that road is closed. I was burned once, at my mother's burial, and I told myself it was grief, that 15 years deserved patience. Now you've burned me a second time, deliberately, in the one dream I had left. I wish you well. I mean that, but I can't carry you anymore, and I'm done trying." She turned and walked toward Dr. Adisa's table. She did not look back. Later, Amara found Mama Ngozi in the corridor with her mop bucket, entirely unsurprised by how it had all unfolded. It turned out the footage had come from her. She'd found the security room unlocked that morning and had quietly arranged for it to play at exactly the right moment. "Ma, how do I thank you?" Amara asked. "You already did," the old woman said. "This morning, when you asked about my legs. Nobody has asked me that in a long time." Edinburgh in January was colder than any warning had prepared her for. But the residency kitchen was the kind of room that reshapes your ambition, and it was there she met Ijeoma, a fellow chef who slid her a note during a lecture that read, "I've been trying to make proper jollof for 6 months. I think you might be the only person in this building who can save me." They became the kind of friends who build each other up instead of quietly tearing each other down, who share contacts, celebrate each other's wins without keeping score, and tell each other the truth gently enough that the truth can actually land. Amara had spent 15 years offering that kind of friendship to someone who could never fully receive it. Now, finally, she had found someone who offered it back. That is not a small thing. That, in fact, is everything. She called her brother Chidi one quiet Sunday evening, the Edinburgh rain tapping soft against her window. "Mama would have been telling the whole market by now," he laughed. "I know," Amara said. "I can hear exactly how she'd have said it." The next morning, she woke before her alarm, made tea, and put on her mother's old blue apron over her sweatshirt, because a kitchen is a kitchen, even in the Scottish cold, and she began to cook. "Before you go, 3 things I want you to sit with, because this community doesn't just watch and disappear." 1. When Amara let Z back in after the burial, was that grace or a mistake she'd already been warned against? Would you have forgiven her the first time? 2. When Amara refused Mama Ngozi's offer of revenge, was that strength or the kind of grace only someone who has already lost the most important thing in her life can afford to give? 3. And sit with this one the longest. Has someone in your life ever told you exactly who they were, from inside a joke, and you laughed instead of listening? Drop your answers below. We don't judge here. We discuss. We grow. We learn from the women who moved quietly and changed everything anyway. This is Fabi the Storyteller, where every story is a mirror, and every ending is a beginning. Amara Chinello is the protagonist, a 29-year-old Igbo caterer and chef from Enugu, now based in Lagos, the youngest of 3 children, raised by a mother who taught her that cooking is a language of love and honesty. She is quiet, disciplined, deeply loyal almost to a fault, but ultimately chooses integrity over revenge and wins the sponsored residency that rebuilds her life in Edinburgh. Zainab, called Z, is the antagonist and Amara's childhood best friend since age 14, charming and warm on the surface, but selfish, competitive, and conflict-avoidant when things get hard for others, absent at Amara's mother's burial, yet fully present when she needs something. She sabotages Amara's competition station out of jealousy, is publicly exposed and disqualified, and ends the story remorseful but permanently estranged from Amara. Amara's mother, referenced throughout though deceased, was a market trader in Enugu who raised Amara in the kitchen and instilled her values, dying in a hit-and-run accident 3 months before the pivotal decisions of the story, her presence anchoring Amara's choices through memory and her old blue apron. Chidi is Amara's brother, living in Enugu, who delivers the news of their mother's death and remains a steady, grounding presence Amara calls throughout the story, including from Edinburgh. Mama Ngozi is the night cleaner at the Lagos Television Center who witnesses Z's sabotage overnight, offers Amara the chance at revenge but respects her refusal, and secretly arranges for the security footage to be played publicly, giving Amara justice without requiring her to compromise her values. Dr. Funky Adisa is the head judge, a respected 20-year food industry veteran who leads the judging panel and gives Amara and Z their public moment of reckoning by asking Amara what should be done. Uloma is Amara's new friend in Edinburgh, a fellow chef at the culinary residency, representing the healthy version of friendship Amara never had with Z, supportive, generous, and honest without cruelty.